All right. So my name is Rachel, and this is my presentation on narrative therapy. So kind of some information about the origins. Generally, it was founded around the 1970s, 1980s, and Michael White is credited to be the founder of it in Australia. And his of the narrative movement, and his kind of notion was that problems affect people and that people don't own problems. To further help with the narrative movement was David Epstein, who was a family therapist who began applying these approaches in little communities that he called leagues. And then Michael Foucault was a French socialist, and he really helped Michael White and David Epstein kind of create the language, I guess was what you would say, around this narrative movement. He kind of helped them adapt some challenging languages and teach people to challenge the concept of ultimate truth, just because that's what we've been told is ultimate truth. And so it's obviously built on the context of storytelling, and more than that, how they shape our lives and how they affect us and impact us. So, and again, I think this is a really important part of the origins of narrative therapy. Problems are viewed as external, and so in that they stem from people's perceptions of themselves rather than the person itself. So it's the difference of I am depression versus I have depression, or even I suffer from depression occasionally. It's kind of adapting the language so that problems feel more solvable and clients feel more in control. I liked this quote because I felt like it connected just the narrative therapy and the origins of family therapy as well. So it says narrative therapy has particular links with family therapy, which have a common ethos of respect for the client, an acknowledgement of the importance of context, interaction, and social construction of meaning. So exactly what this means is what it sounds like. Basically, there's a commonality of respect within narrative therapy that is seen, especially within family therapy, navigating the dynamics of that, and just a deep understanding that context is everything. Interactions matter so much, and how we socially construct things really determines the meaning of them. So as therapists, they avoid labels such as normal and abnormal. And that kind of stems more from Michael Foucault's way of thinking, kind of rejecting the, I guess, just perceived norms and stereotypes that were given, because he saw them as being perpetuating of patterns of privilege and oppression. And so labels like that would be kind of discouraged by a narrative therapist. And it assumes that everyone has good intentions, again, is influenced by their surroundings, that they're not their problems, and that they can develop alternate and empowering stories. So they can take this storyline, this negative one that feels like a problem, and adapt it and find their voice and find power and find authorship, I guess, over their own story. And narrative therapists endeavor to situate themselves with their clients. So it's not really about counselors being the expert. The client is the expert. It's about helping them uncover their language and their voice that is already there. So it doesn't help people solve problems. It deconstructs false underlying stories that don't fit, and then create more constructive ones, so people are more adept and capable of living with their lives. So within marriage and family, it's really similar. There's a huge emphasis on language, which is why I included the little typewriter visual that says normal is boring. This might be something that a client could come in saying, and this might be an example of how a counselor would work with a client to rewrite. Well, is that the case? And what makes you think that's the case? And so language is huge, which I think is helpful. It helps in the context of family. People kind of establish their own vernacular together. And it also externalized conversations, which is huge because so many times we have these stories these lines playing in our own heads, and we're not catching them accurately or correctly. And so it draws that out. And again, back to challenging norms. This is big in narrative therapy, challenging the dominant norms. Okay, so this is the way it is. Why does it have to be that way? Why do you let this be the theme or a chapter in your story? And it confronts clients where they give away their power, where we give away our power. So it's really powerful within the context of a dysfunctional family. In my own life, this is something I've already kind of been interested in through a lot of reading from Brene Brown, who's one of my favorite authors. And in lots of her books that she writes, she talks about kind of similar concept of narratives and how we tell ourselves stories to help ourselves cope, and how we'll settle for creating false endings because we want closure. So we'll create closure in light of an awkward situation. We'll write the ending to that, and it's not necessarily true or accurate. And so she argues that the most dangerous stories are the ones that we make up about ourselves, that kind of diminish who we are and our worth. And this has been really powerful in my life, in my life with my husband. It's easy for me, I think for everyone, but I think especially I can tend to kind of let my thoughts run away from me. And so sometimes I'll just kind of pull away and use one of the techniques she really talks about, which is, so I'm writing the story in my head, and it's that you're upset with me because of this or that. It's been really helpful because it's a way to kind of get out your insecurities without feeling like they own you. So there's less shame around it. And it's been really powerful and effective, and helps people really clarify, no, Rachel, that's not true. That's not on. Or actually, yeah, that's correct. And so it's been a really positive technique in my life. And I just saw so much of this connecting with that and work that I already try to do. But I definitely love the concept of establishing language that doesn't limit or label things, especially when I'm thinking and talking of myself. It's kind of a whole self-care, self-kindness approach. So that's that. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you found it fun.